This is an endless hole. People get it confused with what I call the devil's hole. I brought the dogs with me. They wouldn't go anywhere near the damn thing. It seemed bottomless to him, so he used an old shark fisherman's trick, sending thousands of feet of fishing line down. What I did was I sent down a roll of lifesavers. One guy claims that he threw his departed canine down into the hole. Now I'm going public on this, and that could land me in a pile of junk.
There is a bottomless hole in the ground about 14.5 kilometers west of Ellensburg, Washington. At least, that is what a man who went by the name of Mel Waters claimed to exist on his property when he called into a popular paranormal radio show in 1997. People are still talking about the mysterious pit, which has come to be known simply as Mels Hole. This seemingly endless hole had already been baffling locals for decades. When Waters brought it to the public, it caught the interest of curious minds everywhere and quickly became an urban legend. While some listeners doubted his often outlandish claims, others were captivated and wanted more. As a result, a group of explorers braved the danger to get close and dropped the camera there, and don't you know, what they discovered in the hole sent chills down their spines. What exactly is down there? A gateway to hell? Another dimension? Time portal? Or another planet? Join us as we dig deep into what explorers found at the bottom of Mel's never-ending hole. The legend of Mels Hole. On February 23, 1997, a man who called himself Mel Waters phoned a well-known late-night radio show that featured paranormal stories called Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell. At the time, Coast to Coast AM was the most popular place to discuss all things paranormal, weird, and unexplained. It was the perfect audience for Waters to tell his story. He captivated Bell and the listeners with his tales of a seemingly bottomless hole on his property that possessed mystical qualities. Local legend said it was cursed. The first settlers dubbed it the Devil's Hole. Waters refused to give the exact location, just saying that he lived in Kittitas County, Washington, in a region adjacent to the Manistash Ridge. In two follow-up calls in April 2000 and January 2002, his stories grew even more extreme. There was no way to know at the time that Mels Hole would continue to capture public attention for years to come. Waters, his neighbors, and the previous owners regularly used the mysterious hole as a natural trash pit. They dumped household waste, furniture, and building debris into it for years, but somehow it never filled up. Eventually, Waters grew curious as to the hole's depth. On his first call to the radio show, he described an attempt to test the depth of the hole using a large amount of fishing line, about 24,084 meters of it to be exact. Waters claimed the line still did not reach the bottom. As a reference, the deepest cave in the world is 2,212 meters. According to the United States Geological Survey outlines, the amount of fishing line that Waters used would reach about a quarter of the way through the Earth's crust at its thickest. But the fishing line was only the beginning. In a claim reminiscent of Stephen King's 1983 horror novel and 1989 movie by the same name, Pet Sematary, Waters described an instance where his neighbor dropped the body of their deceased pet dog into the hole. The owner got the shock of their life when they saw their pooch alive and well in the nearby woods only a little while later. They recognized the dog because he wore the same collar, but the dog showed no signs of recognizing his owner and did not respond to his calls. While it may be a more desirable result than the grieving pet owner saw in King's Tale, Waters' claim was more than enough to terrify and enthrall listeners. In another claim, Waters revealed that Mels Hole had strange effects on some everyday objects. Art Bell and his listeners hung on to every word as Waters mentioned the odd things that metal items and portable radios would start to do whenever they were near the opening of the 2.7-meter diameter hole. He claimed that metals would mysteriously change into other metals or substances whenever he held them near the entrance. Waters also recounted an instance where he brought his radio to the pit and set it to his favorite radio station. But instead of music, the radio put out strange, unknown voices and programs and music from the past. Waters described many of his experiments at the pit, and each one seemed to produce a more unsettling result than the last. In one of his final calls, Waters described lowering a bucket of ice down to 457 meters, and when he lifted it out, he noticed that the ice was warm but did not melt. He said it had changed into a flammable substance. The warm ice was not the only time that his experiments defied the laws of science. When he yelled down into the hole, he claimed there was no echo. There was also no sound after large trash items, such as refrigerators or television CRT tubes, were thrown into the pit to confirm that they had hit bottom. One of Waters' most disturbing claims involved lowering a live sheep into the hole to around 1,500 feet, as he did in the ice bucket experiment. The sheep shrieked and kicked on the way down, then suddenly went silent. When Waters lifted it out, he found that the animal had been cooked. The sheep had also developed a strange lump, which, to his horror, started to move. He cut it open and found a fetal seal that he said gazed at him with intelligent, human-like eyes. Waters went on to add that the creature miraculously cured his cancer. It jumped back into the hole, but was seen later by local sheep herders who claimed it radiated a benevolent presence. This chilling story may explain why Waters' dogs refused to come within 30.5 meters of the hole, and why birds never sat on its stone, retaining wall or metal cover. The many strange occurrences that Waters recounted on Coast to Coast AM were not limited to items he lowered into the hole. Sometimes mysterious things would come out of it too. Waters described a disturbing report from one of his neighbors who had seen a blacker-than-black beam of light coming from the cursed pit. He explained it as the light of a flashlight that threw out a beam of solid black instead of the standard whitish hue. Black is easily one of the most ominous colors that could come from a mysterious pit, as it is often associated with evil, death, and emptiness. The talk of Mels Hole eventually got big enough that the federal government caught wind of it. As Waters recounted in a later call, he was heading toward the hole one day when a man in a suit approached him and said that the area had been closed off due to a plane crash. The man told Waters that he was no longer allowed near the pit. Waters described seeing men in biohazard suits standing behind him. Soon after, the government leased the land and gave him a generous amount of money to vacate the property. Waters accepted the money and moved to Australia. The addition of a government conspiracy significantly increased interest in the urban legend. 2 years later, in one of his final calls, Waters claimed he had come back to Washington 2 years after moving to Australia, despite a warning from the government not to return. He said police officers removed him from a bus and left him on the streets of San Francisco 2 weeks later. He had IV marks on his arm, several missing teeth, and no memory of what transpired. Waters managed to continue to his hometown, but felt that menacing strangers were stalking him. He was told his land had been taken over by the government and found the region had been erased on an early mapping system called Terra Server. In logic, we call this a special pleading, an excuse invented to explain away any objection. Why is there no evidence? Of course, the government eliminated all the evidence. Nevertheless, that was not the end of Waters' story. He said that he found a nearly identical hole in the Badlands of Nevada. This one had a metal ring that extended down into the ground instead of a brick lining, but his experiments at the site produced similar results. A Facebook poll from the Daily Record asked people whether they believed Mels Hole was real or not in 2012. Some people from Reddit shared coordinates of possible locations and tried to get a group together to find it in 2018. As recently as 2022, it was featured in a podcast called Astounding Legends in May, and an article on grunge in November. Like Mels Hole, this urban legend may have no end. So what's the status of the Mels Hole tale? Not only has the story not died, but it's continued to garner attention and tickle curiosity. In 2005, 3 years after Melwater's final call to Coast AM, chat groups like those on Above Top Secret discussed the story and its believability. In 2007, folks like those on Sheffield Forum did the same. What's interesting, besides Mel, a tribal medicine man in Washington state, calling himself Gerald R. Osborne, or Red Elk, kept the Mels Hole tale going. He told reporters that he had visited the pit many times since 1961. Osborne then attested to the truth of Mels Hole and claimed that the government maintained a top-secret base there where alien activities take place. An underground base, a very small, underground base. That's how Red Elk explains the white boxes covering the area on some satellite images. He also said he's seen alien activity in the area. A huge spacecraft, one, will appear and hover over the hole. That's what he said happens during summer solstice, when spacemen load and unload things at the hole before flying away. At the Northwest Museum of Legends and Lore, Phil Lipson said he's heard the stories. Well, I believe there is a hole. I think it's actually a true event, just something that's never been totally uncovered. And to this day, many people claim they found that hole and saw weird things happening there. They heard strange noises coming out of the hole. Others saw lights and unusual creatures coming out of the hole. Meanwhile, people or objects that enter it never come back and no one sees them ever again. The entrance to another world. One possible explanation for the anomalous properties of Mels Hole is that it serves as a naturally occurring wormhole, a hypothetical tunnel-like structure that connects disparate points in space-time. If Mels Hole indeed represents a wormhole, its bottomless depths could be attributed to its connection to distant regions of space or alternate dimensions. Alternatively, the observed distortions in space and time near Mels Hole could be the result of localized gravitational anomalies. These anomalies may arise from the presence of dense matter or exotic energy, configurations beneath the surface, leading to curvature effects that influence the behavior of nearby objects and fields. Quantum mechanical effects, such as vacuum fluctuations or quantum entanglement, could also contribute to the anomalous phenomena associated with Mels Hole. If the region surrounding the hole experiences fluctuations in quantum fields, it could manifest as apparent distortions in space and time on macroscopic scales. Investigating the hypothesis of Mels Hole presents several challenges. Given its remote location and the lack of definitive scientific data, empirical validation remains elusive. However, advancements in technology, such as gravitational wave detectors and precision instruments, offer potential avenues for further exploration. Future research could involve conducting detailed surveys of the area surrounding Mels Hole, employing techniques like ground-penetrating radar and gravitational anomaly detection. Additionally, theoretical models incorporating concepts from quantum mechanics and general relativity could provide insights into the nature of space-time distortions at the seat. When the mystery of Mels Hole still has scientists puzzled, conspiracy theorists excited, and the rest of us taking a new look at the stability of the ground beneath our feet. The surface of the Earth is riddled with holes, some on land, some underwater, and some that act as a doorway to an entirely different world. Here are the most bizarre holes in the Earth. Siberia's holes. In the remote expanses of Siberia, a region known for its rugged terrain and extreme climate, recent discoveries have stirred both scientific intrigue and public curiosity. 3 mysterious holes, freshly unearthed from the frozen depths of the Earth. Each orifice seemingly punched into the Siberian landscape with a force both mysterious and immense, has ignited speculation and prompted a flurry of investigations. The first of these enigmatic cavities was stumbled upon by a team of geologists conducting aerial surveys over the Siberian tundra. Nestled amidst a blanket of snow and ice, the perfectly circular opening measured nearly 50 meters in diameter, its edges jagged and rough-hewn as if torn asunder by some unseen force. Dubbed the Siberian Sentinel by the media, its presence stood as a silent sentinel, guarding its secrets with stoic silence. The second hole, discovered just weeks later by a group of adventurous explorers, bore striking similarities to its predecessor. Situated in a remote valley far from the prying eyes of civilization, this new orifice yawned wide, its depths plunging into the frozen earth below. Like the first, it seemed to defy explanation, leaving those who stumbled upon it to wonder at the forces that had shaped its creation. The third and final hole, perhaps the most perplexing of them all, was unearthed by a team of researchers studying the effects of climate change on Siberia's permafrost. Nestled deep within a region known for its volatile landscape, this latest discovery sent shockwaves through the scientific community. Unlike its predecessors, this hole exhibited signs of recent activity, with fresh soil and debris scattered around its rim, hinting at a violent eruption from within. As scientists scrambled to unravel the mysteries of these newfound cavities, theories began to emerge. Some insist that it is related to the gas industry prevalent in the area, but the holes are so far away from gas lines that the idea was dismissed outright by scientists. Other theories include stray missiles, mischievous pranksters, and there is, of course, no shortage of theories about extraterrestrial involvement. The real cause might be a little more terrestrial, but no less strange. One of the working theories about the holes is that they're a kind of reverse sinkhole that hasn't even been scientifically documented yet. In these cases, it's thought that instead of collapsing in on itself, the holes were initiated by an underground collapse caused by the melting of permafrost. The holes then filled with natural gas, and once the pressure became too great, dirt and debris erupted into the air rather than falling into the underground space. According to some locals, the holes aren't actually new, and scientists agree that the growth of vegetation around them indicates that they could have been there for at least a few years. The second hole discovered, located on a peninsula lovingly referred to as the end of the world, was allegedly observed by locals as early as September 2013. Eyewitness accounts differ, though, with some saying it was an explosion from the earth and others claiming to have seen something falling from the sky. Mount Baldis' randomly appearing holes. Nestled along the shores of Lake Michigan, Mount Baldy is known for its pristine sand dunes and stunning views. However, amidst its natural beauty lies a peculiar phenomenon that has captured the fascination of locals and visitors alike: the mysteriously appearing holes of Mount Baldy. These holes, seemingly appearing out of nowhere, have puzzled scientists and intrigued adventurers for years. Ranging from small pits to sizable craters, they appear suddenly in the sand, only to vanish just as mysteriously. Some locals even claim to have witnessed them materialize right before their eyes, as if conjured by some unseen force. The peak of the story of the mysterious holes at Mount Baldy was in 2013, when a 6-year-old boy exploring the sand dunes of Mount Baldy in Indiana Dunes National Park was swallowed by a sinkhole that suddenly appeared beneath him. The boy recovered after a 3-hour ordeal in which he was buried under a little more than 3 meters of sand, and other sinkholes have been randomly appearing ever since. Geologists are baffled by the phenomenon at Mount Baldy. As the landscape is made of sand, which doesn't create air pockets, none of the conditions necessary for sinkholes to form should be present. In fact, when the sinkholes do occur, they only last about a day before they're filled in with surrounding sand. The use of ground-penetrating radar has yielded no clues. A year after the first sinkhole was seen, they're not only still appearing, they pop up with such frequency that the park is still off-limits. In an attempt to stabilize the sand dune, grasses are being planted with the hope that their root system will stop erosion and ground shifting. Some scientists believe that the instability of the sand dune may have something to do with its rather storied history, which includes supplying much of the sand once used to make mason jars. The Kola Super Deep Borehole. Not all holes in the Earth's crust are naturally formed or mysterious in origin. From 1970–1994, geologists in Russia dug the biggest hole in the Earth that anyone had ever seen in the name of science. The result was the Kola Super Deep Borehole, and it eventually reached a depth of 12 kilometers. Along the way, they found some amazing things. Tunneling through rock at these kinds of depths is tunneling through history after all. The scientists found the remains of life that had existed on the surface 2 billion years ago, at a staggering depth of 6,700 meters, which is approximately 22 Eiffel Towers stacked on top of each other. Biologists found tiny plankton fossils. While different types of rock were obviously expected to be seen while digging, it's incredible that the relatively fragile organic compounds withstood the immense pressure built up over thousands of years from the miles of rock that had formed on top of them. Examining intact rock cores proved to be difficult. Released from the extreme pressure found at their depths and exposed to lower temperatures, rock samples pulled from the borehole deformed themselves as they were removed. Pressures and temperatures were expected to rise the deeper the hole was drilled, but scientists found that the temperatures were much higher than they had predicted. By the time they had reached a depth of 10,000 meters, the temperature had skyrocketed to 180 degrees Celsius. Sadly, digging stopped when it no longer became possible to combat the heat. The hole is still there, of course, near the Russian town of Zapolyarny, but it's been covered with a metal cap. The German Continental Deep Drilling Program and the Earth's heartbeat. In 1994, drilling stopped on the German Super Deep Hole, originally conceived as one of the most ambitious geoscientific projects ever. The goal of the project was to allow scientists the chance to study things like the effects of stress on layers of rock, the presence of abnormalities in the Earth's crust, the structure of the crust, and how heat and stress were conducted through it. The $350 million project left Windesheschenbach, Germany, with a hole 9,100 meters deep and as hot as 265 degrees Celsius. Amid a variety of scientific experiments, Dutch artist Lotte Given had something much different in mind for the super deep borehole. She wanted to know what the planet sounded like. First dismissed by the real scientists who told her it was obviously silent down there, Given persisted. She lowered a geophone into the hole to record ultrasonic waves beyond the ability of a human ear to detect. After running the data through a computer program that translated the data to a frequency we can hear, she had the sounds of the Earth. She likened it to the sound of a thunderstorm in the distance, but it sounds eerily like a heartbeat. Dead Sea sinkholes. No one knows exactly how many sinkholes have appeared around the Dead Sea, but it's estimated that 2,500 have been created since 1970, 1,000 in the last 15 years alone. Like the holes appearing in Siberia, they're signs of environmental change. The Dead Sea is fed by the Jordan River, and every year, less and less water flows into it. The sea itself is only about 1/3 as large as it was in the 1960s, and the draining of the lake is causing the sinkholes, along with the demise of resorts and hotels that were once lakeside but now stand miles from the shore. As the salty water of the lake recedes through the ground, fresh water advances to meet it. When that fresh water is introduced into the ground with its high salt content, much of the salt is dissolved. The ground is weakened and starts to collapse. The Dead Sea has always been in a state of change. It was once connected to the Sea of Galilee, but that connection dried up about 18,000 years ago. Now changes are more often man-made. The water that once flowed into it to maintain its delicate balance is being siphoned away and rerouted throughout Jordan and Syria, meaning that it only gets about 10% of the water it needs to maintain its size. At one time, the sea was a hugely popular destination for those making religious pilgrimages or hoping to be healed by its mystical waters. Now, a more frequent sight are the warning signs cautioning the dangers of spontaneously appearing sinkholes. There is a bright side, though. If you're swallowed by a sinkhole, it'll be named after you. Dean's Blue Hole. Dean's Blue Hole, a natural wonder nestled within the picturesque shores of the Bahamas, stands as a testament to the Earth's hidden marvels. This geological wonder, renowned as the world's deepest known underwater sinkhole, captivates all who venture near its azure depths. Its name is derived from Herbert Herbo Henry, who owned the land on which the hole is situated, and the stunning azure hue of its waters. From the surface, it appears as a circular patch of vibrant blue amidst the crystal-clear waters of the surrounding sea. However, its true allure lies beneath the waves. Plunging to a depth of over 202 meters, Dean's Blue Hole is a vertical chasm of incomprehensible proportions. Its sheer walls descend into darkness, creating an otherworldly realm that beckons explorers and adventurers from around the globe. The water within the hole is renowned for its remarkable clarity, offering visibility of up to 30 meters or more on a clear day. The geological formation of Dean's Blue Hole is a product of both natural processes and ancient history. It is believed to have formed thousands of years ago during the last ice age, when rising sea levels flooded cave systems carved into the limestone bedrock. As the caves collapsed, they left behind deep, circular sinkholes, such as Dean's Blue Hole. Beyond its geological significance, Dean's Blue Hole holds a special place in the hearts of divers and freedivers alike. Freediving, the art of exploring underwater depths on a single breath, has gained popularity in recent years, and Dean's Blue Hole has become a mecca for enthusiasts seeking to test their limits. Its depth and clarity provide a unique and challenging environment for freedivers to push themselves to new extremes. In 2010, William Trubridge set a record for diving 101 meters into the hole with no outside oxygen or other gear. A Brooklyn diver died trying to beat that record in 2013 after being underwater for more than 3.5 minutes, surfacing and immediately losing consciousness. Competition isn't an unfamiliar thing at this Blue Hole. It's the site of an event called Vertical Blue, where more than 30 divers meet annually to compete in different freediving events. Although it attracts adventurous people from all over the world, those who live near Dean's Blue Hole in Clarencetown and Long Island tend to stay away from it. According to legend, the hole was dug by the devil, and he still can be found there, dragging people who dare to swim in the hole to their deaths. Those who do brave the hole have found a breathtaking array of sea life, including schools of fish and groups of sea turtles that are invariably friendly and curious about the oddly shaped creatures they've suddenly found in their tropical paradise. The Devil's Sinkhole. The Devil's Sinkhole is a massive underground chamber located in Edwards County, Texas. An opening 15 meters wide leads to a cavern 106 meters deep that now plays a unique ecological role as home to one of the largest known colonies of Mexican free-tailed bats. While they're not actually allowed into the cavern, visitors can see more than 3 million bats fly from the entrance to the sinkhole every night throughout the summer months. The history of the sinkhole is shrouded in mystery. Legend has it that Native American tribes once regarded the sinkhole as a sacred site, imbued with spiritual significance and inhabited by supernatural beings. According to folklore, the devil himself was said to reside within its depths, emerging only under the cover of darkness to wreak havoc on unsuspecting travelers. However, beyond the myths and legends, the cave was raided by treasure seekers and artifact hunters before it was a protected site, and arrowheads and dart tips found there dated to 4000 to 2500 BC. Later, the sinkhole was used as shelter for cowboys traveling to the west on horseback and undoubtedly for people of other, shadier occupations. More of its history was destroyed when manufacturers of ammonia fertilizer began harvesting bat guano from the cave, which has made it all but impossible to accurately trace the history of the cavern. The Sawmill Sink. The Sawmill Sink is another blue hole in the Bahamas, but it has much more scientific significance than simply attracting extreme sports athletes. The Blue Hole was the site of an archaeological dig that has changed what scientists think the landscape was like 1,000 years ago. The Sawmill Sink is unique in that it was once dry, but as water levels rose, it slowly filled with water, which preserved the bones that were hiding there. Fossils found include the remains of a giant tortoise, which scientists didn't even think lived in the area, as well as birds, seeds, flowers, and even the remains of plants that have had their green coloring and chlorophyll preserved. Perhaps most intriguing are the remains of giant crocodiles that researchers believe were killed off by the people living in the area at the time. The Blue Hole also held the remains of one of the earliest known residents of the Bahamas, estimated to be about 1,050 years old. The Black Hole of Andros. The Black Hole of Andros, located on the island of South Andros in the Bahamas, doesn't share the same clear, deep blue color of other holes in the area. It's not exactly black, but a very dark purple. And that's because, about 18 meters down the hole, there's a thick, toxic layer of bacteria floating between a heavily oxygenated upper level and an oxygen-free lower level. The island itself is inhospitable, consisting of little more than mud, making it all but impossible to reach the black hole without specific equipment like helicopters. It was first explored by scientist and diver Steffi Schwabe, who was the first to cross through the milky, inky layer of bacteria that a fellow diver described as like swimming through paint. Underneath, she found a thin layer of clear water, and then another purple layer that she described as looking like jelly. The strange layers of water have very high levels of toxic hydrogen sulfide. They also contain bacteria that has not only bred between the water levels, but also resulted in the preservation of water conditions that have remained largely unchanged for the last 3.5 billion years. The Son Doong Cave. While technically mostly a cave system, Vietnam's Son Doong is accessible by several large holes in the surface of the earth. It was first explored in 2009, after one of the holes was discovered by a local farmer. It was so thoroughly buried in the jungle that it was thought to be pure luck that he found it at all. When members of the British Cave Research Association entered the hole, they found something absolutely breathtaking. The cave has been declared the largest in the world, and it wasn't easy to explore. It was created between 2 and 5 million years ago, carved from the limestone by an underground river. In some places, the erosion reached so close to the surface that parts of the cave roof collapsed to form more holes. These holes allowed enough sunlight to reach the cave floor that a massive jungle began to grow in the cave. There's a 60-meter wall of calcite, an underground river and waterfalls, and stalagmites and stalactites that have grown to 80 meters in length. This cavernous jungle is also home to an impressive array of wildlife, including poisonous centipedes and whitefish. There are massive chambers that can hold an entire city block, complete with skyscrapers as well as bamboo forests and giant cave pearls. The land that time forgot is a surreal landscape just under the feet of villagers, showing that perhaps the age of exploration isn't over just quite yet. That's all the information that we have for you today. And don't forget to give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed today's episode, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the bell so you never miss out on future episodes. And be sure to also tell us what you think about today's content. Everyone's support motivates us to continue delivering quality content and to always improve. As always, thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.